Hi, I'm Marc Childs from FMCG Institute. As part of our commitment to developing world-class commentary on emerging challenges in our industry, we run a masterclass each year on a selected topic. This year it was Rethinking Trading Strategy. In this four-part series, we're going to bring you briefings from four exceptionally capable subject matter experts who we were lucky enough to have presenting in that masterclass. In this first of four Barcelona Masterclass videos, we summarise an important briefing provided by Warren Langley, Global Chief Executive of Scotwork. I deliberately sought out Scotwork because an important aspect of this masterclass is constructive engagement with customers. Warren was a perfect fit for our masterclass because Scotwork methodology stands out among leading negotiating consultancies because it lends itself so well to engaging well with customers, whereas I feel that a lot of the others tend to be quite adversarial. Here's Warren.
How then do we change the way that we view collaboration? So in terms of the agenda and what we'll run through, I'll give you an introduction, a little bit more of an introduction to myself and to the work that Scotwork does. But mostly I'll focus on a question, which is, are buyers and sellers capable of effective collaboration as we stand right now? We'll take a look at some research, a big piece of research Scotwork have been doing recently. In terms of an introduction, we work with more than 50% of this room already. And so some of you know the work that Scotwork do. But for those of you who don't know Scotwork that well, pioneered the field and now been working in this field for over 40 years, rooted in academic research. And from that point onwards, I've continued to do the research, but have made sure that the academic thinking that's behind what we do is converted into something that's highly practical. A big theme of the data is about how the behaviours right now actually hinder collaboration, and they're the pieces I'm going to pick out for you. I get to sit down with lots of organisations and talk about their negotiation challenges. And I must be honest and say that quite often organisations don't know where they're going wrong when it comes to negotiation. If I ask the simple question, what are your best negotiators doing compared to your average or your worst negotiators? The answer is usually we don't know. And that's a challenge to benchmark performance at the start if we want to carry out a genuine transformation. So a number of years ago, we started to look at this really closely and say, in three areas, what's going on? Do people have a good understanding of the core concepts of negotiation? Do they understand the core competencies? And is there a preferred approach? If you went into your organisation, is there a way that you would typically handle a negotiation? The results are frightening for most organisations because they quickly realise that against some of the key measures, they're not very good when it comes to negotiating and need to make some big changes. Well, if you're dealing with a retail population and the behaviours that they see are more representative of what's on the numbers to follow, then think of that as the way that they've been conditioned to collaborate with suppliers. But the data that I'm going to share with you is extensive. It covers 19 countries, 35 industries, and over 3,000 respondents. Do you think people are happy out there when it comes to collaboration? Well, I can tell you they're not, okay? So 22% believe that they can see this long-term value for their business. Only 1 in 5 are saying that after my negotiations, I always feel like this. In terms of seeing the benefits, the number is more, 38%. And only 32%, a third of people see a long-term build in the relationship as a result of the negotiations. The last one I think is staggering. You know, one in 4 people think about that the other party will have to sell this to their stakeholders, and 10% didn't even understand the concept. Now, one of the big themes that comes out for me when I talk to organisations is they say, my team are very comfortable going in and presenting. They prepare excellent fact-based proposals, and they're very happy going in and having a monologue, making that presentation, but they'd prefer to close it down at that stage and not go off-piste, not have this creative dialogue, not stray into areas where they maybe don't have the answers or they have to show flexibility or creativity. I believe that the poor negotiator doesn't have a choice, that they are very transactional, very one-dimensional. They try to get what they want by persuasion or power, whereas the skilled negotiator recognises, as Carl was saying yesterday, that if I can give the other side what they want and get back what I want in return, that's a good thing. If I can use negotiation as an enabling process rather than a blocking process, that's going to move this forward. 5 behaviours that we think hinder collaboration. First of all, that negotiators are selfish, that they will argue or persuade rather than negotiate, that they concentrate on the cost to them rather than the value that's enhancing, that they're stubborn. Once they've decided on a path, that's the path we're going to take, and that they don't trade. I know what's important to me before I start to negotiate. I know what questions to ask when I meet the other party. I establish at the outset what the other party wants. Just take for a moment, a second, just to think about those 3 questions and how you would answer them. What percentage of times would it be always for you? Okay. So 51% of people are saying, I know what's important to me before I start the negotiation. You can read that in 2 ways. What I think it's saying is half the people are arriving at a negotiation not even knowing what they want. Interesting. I know what questions I will ask the other party when I get to the negotiation. Only 1 in 4 have considered what they're going to ask the other side at the negotiation. Now, you may say, well, that never happens to us, but the important thing is, I think if the other people in your category are behaving in this way, then these buyers are being conditioned by this behaviour. We said that during preparation, which is important, there will be lots of assumptions. You know, we don't always have all of the answers. But that should enable us to write down the question list of the things we're going to check and test our assumptions when we get into the meeting. Going into a meeting and not even knowing what you're going to ask the other side, it's no wonder sometimes it leads to chaos. I establish at the outset what the other party wants. So I'm now going to embark on a negotiation with the other side, and only 15% of people are going to find out from the start what they want. I read that as 85% of them are just going to launch into telling the other side of the table what it is that they need. And I think it's because we spend a lot of time focusing on how I can persuade the other side with my proposal, rather than make a genuine proposal that's built on their needs too. And there's a fear of being opened up and exposed. Okay, I almost don't want to know what they want. I'd rather not hear. Okay, and then we get surprised when they reject our proposals. Of course they're going to reject the proposal if it's not meeting their needs. And sometimes persuasion can be useful to do that as well. So message is, we're not saying persuasion is a bad thing. What we're saying is we think there's an over-reliance on it. And if you genuinely have a collaborative agenda, then you need to move from trying to persuade always to trading more. Okay. So let's look at the percentages. I take into account the difference between the cost to me and the value to them. Only 34% say that they always do that. Link it to the next one. My concessions are based on what they will cost me. So if I'm going to give something to you, I'm thinking, what does it cost me? The next step in that process is, if it doesn't cost me a lot, then okay, I'll give it to you. A much better process is to say, how much value does the other side put on that concession? When I have a true understanding of the value that the other side puts on the concession, then surely I'm now in a place to ask for a big enough trade back in return. This next one's interesting. If they make a demand of me, first of all, I always propose something less. 35% always do that. So the buyer has identified what they want, and the first response is to say, you're not having that. Let me tell you, I'm prepared to give you less than that. Now, that's quite natural. And, it's a habit that is not surprising. But if you flip that on its head and say to yourself, what would be the price? What would I need to do in order to give them 100% of what they're asking for? And if I could start to think in that way, then I can start to look at what trades would I need. So it comes back to preparation and the importance to have an agenda for preparation. Genuinely, I think that most people congratulate themselves that they've had some time and managed to get some preparation done. But consistently, preparation is very, very poor. So there's no excuse really for people not to be consistently well prepared when they're going into negotiations. We've just seen from hard data out there that lots of them haven't thought about the questions they're going to ask, they haven't thought about the concessions they're going to make. And just think about how that comes across to the other side when they're negotiating. So back to the example in the last module. If you want to have a truly collaborative agenda, you need to be looking at your priorities and their priorities and seeing where you can force that alignment where there's a match. I have a fallback plan. Less than 20% of people are saying that they've got a fallback plan if their first strategy doesn't work. Why does this happen? Well, I think it happens because we fall in love with our strategy. We've got an objective. That's the important bit. The strategy is only a path to get to that objective. But we become so wedded to our own strategy that when the other side says, no, we're not going to follow your path, we'd like you to follow our path, the first response is, well, we can't do that because I've got my path. I think this next one is fascinating. I will concede their demand if they make it worth my while. Less than 1 in 10 people are prepared to concede the demand, even if the other side is going to give them enough to make it worth the while. Planning is so important, and why we would urge you to spend time to think about your creativity and to think about your flexibility before you even get in there. The message really is to say, if you've got the process right and if you've got the skills right, you can enhance the control, manage the process, be more confident and be more collaborative.
Thank you, Warren. That was an excellent presentation. Well, that was a real eye-opener for me. It certainly suggests that serious action is needed. If you'd like to know more, our white paper, Rethinking Trading Strategy, is available on our website. This is Marc Childs from FMCG Institute. Thanks for watching.